Max, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Gene. I'm honored to be here with you guys.
Max, I had the opportunity to watch you cook, starting up in Bucks County with the Smoked Salmon business and then moving down into the Constitution Center. And I had firsthand opportunity to watch your taste, your flavors, your style. A man who could add more butter than holidays than I ever thought possible, and a man who could do more things with pork belly that'll blow your socks off than anybody else. But Max, you weren't born that way. You weren't born to the gentleman farmer. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got to where you're at, and what your education is.
Well, food has always been a very important part of my life. I always reference my grandfather as being a remarkable influence on me. He was a true gentleman farmer, had a beautiful property, and my brother and I would basically learned how to grow vegetables and to can vegetables and to prepare things from age-old family recipes. And so he was a huge influence. He's also the first person who took me to the Italian market, to DeBruno's, when I was 8 or 10 years old. Literally, before anybody knew there was an Italian market in Philadelphia, my grandfather was going there to buy cheeses of all sorts and beautiful olives and all sorts of different specialty foods. He was, I call him the original locavore. And I think that is, he's made such a huge, been such an important influence in how I source food and whatnot. When we would have family meals, we would go to one butcher, Maresca's over in Ringo's, that was famous for, just old school, two German brothers who were just amazing butchers and would butcher the meat for him. He would go to one apple orchard for apples and a second apple orchard for a cider. And so, these are the kinds of things that made a huge, impression upon me as a young culinary, as a pre-culinarian, I would say.
Well, you took, a different route than a lot of culinary growing up to. You did a lot of research going into culinary school. And you chose a school that, was not the mainstream culinary institute, not the mainstream Johnson Wells, but you went to New England Culinary, which had really a great reputation and produced magnificent chefs, but was very low key. How did that all come about? What got you up to New England Culinary?
Well, it's very funny you asked that, and you also referenced the word research, because I literally went to the Firestone Library in Princeton, which was about 40 minutes from my house, and was trying to look up culinary schools. And this was probably the very late, late 70s, it was the late 70s. There were so few culinary schools. There was obviously Johnson & Wales and the CIA, and there was the California Culinary Institute, and I think there was one in Baltimore. But I was drawn to the New England Culinary Institute. I was ironically I was studying classics at Vassar College for 3 years when I sort of got hit over the head by the food business and my love of food, and I felt more productive in 1 week in the kitchen than I did in 6 months of studying, art history and classics. So it's somehow the size of the New England Culinary Institute appealed to me. There was a wonderful chef there, Michel Leborgne, a Frenchman, who started the school with Fran Voigt and a couple other people. And he had I'll never forget, I went up there for an interview, and he said, if I want you to learn how to butcher a chicken, I'm not going to show you on some screen. You're going to butcher a case of chickens. And if I don't like the way you do that, you're going to butcher a second case of chickens. So that approach appealed to me. It was extremely hands-on. We were running restaurants, literally some of us for the, I had a great deal of experience at that time working on Martha's Vineyard in some great restaurants, working in New Hope, Pennsylvania, where I grew up, at Mother's, a classic restaurant back in the day. I worked up in Maine at a snack shop called the Osprey's Nest that became a pretty good restaurant. Became a very good restaurant. It was literally like crab rolls and hot dogs and whatnot. And then this wonderful chef came in and really turned it into a world-class restaurant. So I did have experience going in, and I did research because I knew that I really wanted to hit the ground running.
Well, you certainly did that. And, later on in your career, you actually had an opportunity to go back and spend a little bit more time there in a different role. You came back to Bucks County after you had worked in many locations and all, and you started early on with your business with a product that a lot of people would not necessarily associate with Bucks County, or a little bit different. But for those people who don't know Max, Max makes a salmon, a smoked salmon, unlike anyone else in America. It is just the perfect combination of savory, a little bit of sweet, and it's just so moist and delicious. Tell us how the salmon business came about.
Well, it's a huge part of who I am and who we are, and it started actually on my single days off, and I say that as I used to work 6 days a week in Manhattan. First at Memphis, a restaurant, a Cajun and Creole restaurant on the Upper West Side. And then I had the great pleasure and honor of working with Thomas Keller at Raquel before he moved out west to open the French Laundry. And I also worked at the Plaza Athénée. Le Regent's is the restaurant with the Rostang family, and just amazing opportunities. And actually, I should say, more importantly, at Le Regent, Sota Kuhn was the sous chef for Danielle Boulud. And unbeknownst to everybody but Sota Kuhn, Danielle was not going on vacation, but he was planning to open Le Cirque. And so I was hired at that time, and I was young, and I had some experience, but that's almost a bad thing in a kitchen like that, because they just beat the hell out of you. I mean, I learned so much, but I also learned that you learn more by somebody teaching you instead of hurling things at you, or reading you the riot act or screaming at the top of their lungs. It's like, that's no way to instruct or teach somebody how to do something.
Well, the style that I always took to be was the middle of the crisis, no matter. And, with time I spent with you, we were producing dinners for 800,000, and just doing phenomenal numbers at the Constitution Center and other locations. And you were just always calm and cool and collected in the kitchen, and there was no screaming and yelling. I should say there was no screaming and yelling from you, because that's not the nature of our industry. There's lots of screaming and yelling at times, but you were always very calm and just stayed focused and produced that. So, something I genuinely respect, because I too have had a few of those plates tossed in my head. Know what that feeling was like.
Yeah, it occurred to me I didn't answer your question about the smoked salmon. So I would go to Zabar's on these single days off. I would go to Zabar's. I would go to Bernie Greengrass. I would try their smoked salmon, and it always seemed either too fishy to me, too salty to me, too greasy to me. It just didn't taste like what I really thought good smoked salmon should be, which is more like a Scottish smoked salmon. It's much more delicate. We've always done similar, because of that style. We've always done a dry cure as opposed to a brine cure, and it results in a much more silky, buttery texture and flavor. And that all started up at the New England Culinary Institute when I went back to teach. And one of my former instructors, we were both running the Elm Street Cafe. He was doing lunch service, and I was doing dinner service. And I found an old Scottish smoking manual, and we started fooling around with it, and we came up with a really spectacular recipe. So through trial and error, and God knows how many hundreds of thousands of pounds of salmon, 30 years later, we really have it down. 2002 Food and Wine named us their favorite smoked salmon in the country. And I also wrote a smoked salmon cookbook with Chronicle Books out of San Francisco. So it is definitely a big part of who we are.
I'm sitting here, and our listeners can't see this right now, but I'm like, where's my smoked salmon? Because I'm like, that sounds amazing.
I should have brought some.
Well, having had that salmon numerous times, I can attest to really the amazing quality of it and the amazing quality of all your products. I've been blessed throughout the years to go to tastings that you've been attending or bridal shows, and as well as do events where you were chefing, and a little bit about that whole world. So, early on, in your career here in Bucks County, when you came back down here, you had the opportunity to move into the opening of the National Constitution Center and take over a role as the executive chef that led. Tell us a little bit about those days and what it was like to go from the small caterer in Bucks County to thousands of people in a week.
It's all about multiplication, and that's the way I looked at it. It's like doing many. It's a little repetitive, but you're doing, instead of trying to, do a huge batch of something. We did numerous small batches of things, and it may have taken us a little bit longer, but I think that's how we kept the quality. I'll never forget, maybe that was a funny slip of words there, but the first large event we did at the Apollo of Temple for a software company. It was 1,500 people. And so that was our first sort of big step from doing, even a couple hundred people, 500 people, 1,500 people is a big first step to the next league. And we executed perfectly. We served the food. Everybody freaked out over the quality of it. We didn't have an exit strategy. I remember opening the truck the next day, and it's like a hurricane went off inside the truck. So I learned very quickly what we do is besides produce delicious food in huge quantities, we also we're a logistics company. We're all about logistics. It's like catering we're the Army. If we do our job correctly, we come in.